Welcome to our exploration of the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet, a powerful short story said during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. Brought to you by Ape School, narrated through the eyes of a young boy named Franz, this story captures the deep connection between language and identity and the pain of losing both under the shadow of war. Let's dive into this poignant tale of loss, regret, and resilience. The story provides us a brief yet memorable glimpse of how one's language is rooted to one's identity and what happens when there is an attempt to slowly sever the tie between a people and its language by a powerful enemy. It also highlights how language comes to the surface in times of crisis when one's identity is most threatened. The last lesson is a great reminder of how we cannot take our language for granted and how important it is to love and learn one's language in order to protect one's individual and collective identity. The last lesson. Summary. The last lesson is a first-person narrative whose speaker is a little boy named Franz. The boy is a resident of Alsace-Lorraine district of France that has lately been occupied by the Prussians. The story begins one fine morning when we find little Franz hurrying off to school. He is quite scared as the French teacher. Hamel is supposed to question the students on the past participle. Franz hasn't learned it yet. With great effort, Franz resists the temptation to bunk his class and goes unwillingly to school. He sees a crowd gathered around a bulletin board, the medium through which all of the bad news had reached Alsace. Lost battles, droughts, and the orders of the commanding officers. Franz banks heavily on the usual commotion of the class and plans to quietly slip into his bench without attracting the attention of Monsieur Hamel. However, he finds that the garden outside the school is as silent as on a Sunday morning. He peers through the window and sees his classmates in their respective seats, frightened in the shame. He opens a door and enters the class. Surprisingly, Monsieur Hamel is rather kind towards him and doesn't reproach him for being late. Franz goes to his desk and notices that the teacher has put on a green coat, a frilled shirt, and his black silk cap, usually worn on special occasions like award ceremonies and inspection. To his surprise, he also sees the residents of his village all huddled up in the classroom. He sees old Hauser, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and many others sitting on the back bench of the class, all seated with a solemn look on their faces, while Franz begins guessing the reason behind such an unusual day. Monsieur Hamel drops the bombshell. "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." This is a terrible shock to Franz. It finally dawns on him what the bulletin on the town hall meant. He regrets not having taken his French lessons seriously, choosing instead to peek at the bird's nest, choosing instead to go sliding on the Saar River. This is to be his last lesson, and he doesn't even know how to write. He also feels sad for M. Hamel, a man who had given 40 years of service to the place and who was being told to leave it forever. He understands the regret of the village folks not having taken their language seriously either. The presentation of lessons begins, and M. Hamel calls little Franz to recite the rules of participle. To his great embarrassment, he fumbles and is completely lost. The teacher doesn't scold Franz, but reveals the sad truth. Every day we have said to ourselves, "Bah, I have plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we've come out. Ah, that's the great trouble, Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow." Hamel says that in part it is Franz's parents and himself who are to blame. He then goes on to describe the beauty of the French language, stating that it is the most beautiful, most logical language in the world, and that the people must always be able to guard the language and never forget it. What follows next is one of the most memorable lines of the story. As Hamel says, when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they have the key to their prison. He then begins the grammar lesson. Franz understands it all. It seems that earlier he hadn't listened so carefully, and then Hamel hadn't taught as patiently as he did in his last lesson. The grammar is followed by the writing lesson. Everybody gets down writing, and the class is filled with a pin-drop silence. Once, some beetles fly in, but nobody pays attention to them, not even the little kids. The cooing of the pigeons on the roof makes Franz wonder whether the Germans will make the birds sing in German as well. When Franz looks up, he sees Monsieur Hamel scanning the entire class as if to imprint the scene in his memory. The writing lesson is followed by the babies chanting their ba, bee, bee, boo, etc. Even old Hauser joins their recital with tears in his eyes. Then, the The clock strikes 12. At the same time, the Prussians sound the trumpet, and Monsieur Hamel freezes. He tries to say something, but is overwhelmed with emotion. "My friends," said he, But something choked him. He could not go on. He stops and starts scribbling on the blackboard with large letters. "Vive la France!"